right, I'm delighted to say we're joined by the vicar and author, Reverend Pat Allerton. Welcome, Pat.
Thank you very much.
Lovely to see you. So, well, firstly, let's just sort of talk about that. And why were you upset by Teddy Swims crying? Is it just that everyone's...
I wasn't upset by it.
But annoyed by it?
I think it's so utterly wimpish. I mean, you cry when you need to. You don't try to cry.
Pat, can you give Anne some advice, some spiritual advice?
Don't even try.
No, I think we'll probably leave it there.
You did vote for him as the Person of the Year, didn't you?
I nominated him as the Person of the Year, absolutely.
Under COVID? Or?
During COVID, when COVID first started, Pat took his loudspeaker out into the streets with the Christian message and got everybody singing Christian hymns, and they were coming to their doors and doing it. And I thought, that is useful.
Yes.
Unlike most of the pronouncements from the bishops, that is useful.
Yeah, well, that's how we kind of all discovered him, and you became a bit of a star. I know it would annoy you, but known as the hot priest to some. Has a parish in Notting Hill, sexy Notting Hill in London. And Pat's gone across the country to discover the secrets of some of the best cathedrals in Britain. So the series is called Britain's Greatest Cathedrals. Lucky you doing this. To the Glory of God is the title, on Channel 5. Oh, my goodness. Now, I'm so glad we saw Durham there. Yeah. I think Durham, hands down, is the greatest, but then I went to Durham University, so I'm in love with it.
Yes.
Where would you put that on the great cathedrals list?
I think it's probably my favourite too.
Really?
I'm not just saying that to humour you. I nearly went to Durham Cathedral, pulled out at the last minute, went to Edinburgh, but Durham
University,
Durham University. Yeah. I love Durham Cathedral.
There it is, Palace Green. Yeah.
Yeah, it's an absolute...
Well, you've really given me loads of Durham pictures here. This is great.
Yeah.
It's, what is it, the size or the...
Yeah, I love how it's in the north, it's up high, truly visible. It's so strong, the pillars are so thick.
Yeah.
It clearly declares the message of hope, and good news in Christ. And it's beautiful. I mean, it's a monster.
Amazing, yeah.
And how old it is.
I know. And it's nearly 1,000 years old. Yeah. And its fathers and sons worked on it and they died working on it, and you couldn't do it now. That's the thing that's so strange. We couldn't do it now. Have a look.
I can honestly say that I've never been to a cathedral like this. What strikes you as you walk in is you see the ancient ruin opposite this extraordinary modern building and design, and you think, hang on, how can these two hold together? But here in this sort of portico area with these tall, giant columns that reach to the sky, you have two huge crosses between them, holding together the old and the new, the ancient and the modern. And it leaves you just feeling a sense of wonder at this design.
Oh, I used to work in Coventry. I don't... Oh, man, you've really given me a problem here, because I just like old stuff. I don't like the new cathedral. What do you think, Anne?
Well, as a good Catholic, I'm going to say that I like Westminster Cathedral.
OK, OK.
But actually, if I had to choose, if I did really choose, I think York Minster.
Yeah, but Westminster Cathedral is an eyesore. You're not talking about Westminster Abbey here. You're talking about that.
I'm talking about
one.
Westminster Cathedral.
Legoland one. Yeah.
It is not Legoland, you irreverent creature.
What about you, Michael? Do you want to choose a cathedral?
I think it's gorgeous.
Which one?
Westminster Cathedral.
You're talking about Westminster Abbey, are you?
No, I think Westminster Cathedral is more tasteful than Westminster Abbey, actually.
What does the front look like?
It's behind you. It's got this sort of red and white brick.
So, all right. I mean, I shouldn't be... I used to work in Coventry, and I could see... Look, the Germans bombed the other one, and that's awful. And it's the fact that it's there is a very powerful thing, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. I was amazed at what I learnt on this journey, but about Coventry, that the provost, Richard Howard at the time, was on the roof of the old cathedral, literally kicking off incendiary bombs with a couple of other volunteers, risking his life to protect... I'm probably with you, Jeremy. I like the old. But for what they had to do with the modern, it is incredible. The inside especially, maybe not so much the outside.
Yeah, and also it was... I mean, just off the back of the Second World War that they built it, and things were really tough, and to prioritise a new cathedral was a good thing.
Yeah.
So let's have a little sneak peek at tonight's episode. Oh, we've seen that already. I'm so sorry. I read that because it was in front of me, but obviously we've already done it, so forgive me. Shall we just have another sneak peek? We have got a picture of...
Something old.
We've got a picture of you with the hot priest. Let's have a look
What?
at this.
Have you?
Yeah, apparently so. From Fleabag. I think, okay, okay, not alongside each other, but someone has... Can you tell them apart, Anne? Yes, you can.
Yes, I can.
Do you know who the guy on the left is, Anne?
You said something about Fleabag.
Fleabag. Did
Which
you ever
I
see
never
that?
saw.
Yeah, comedy, brilliant. Do you think we're a godless country now, Pat?
Well, I think you've got to look at the data, the stats. I mean, it would seem to suggest, I think 95% of people aren't in church on a Sunday. But I think on the other, on the flip side, a huge percentage of people still pray, once a day, or would describe themselves as spiritual but not religious. So there's a lot of people searching, and I think the stats show, Alpha courses show, I think the average age is about 27, and they're on the increase. There's more and more young people coming into churches today. So I think something's, even Michael says, in the green room, that you've got a fresh interest.
I've got a fresh interest in
Have
religion.
you?
Yeah, well, I was brought up an atheist. I was very much a sort of Richard Dawkins fan when I was sort of a teenager. But now I'm kind of like, it's done a lot, hasn't it, for our history, Christianity. I'm sort of coming round to the idea of maybe believing in some fairy tales isn't the worst thing in the world.
With these beautiful cathedrals, what I'm fascinated in is the fact that what was going on in people's lives, minds, hearts, that they built them back then. That these ideas, this faith took shape. It actually took form in stone,
And now we're closing
in glass.
churches. Now we're closing churches.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we have become pretty godless as a society, and I think the single biggest pity of it is the absence of forgiveness now.
Wow.
I mean, if you look at social media and you look at the witch hunts and the vengeance, there's an absence of forgiveness, and that is because there's a decline in Christianity.
Although I suppose Christianity wasn't completely a stranger to witch hunts in its past.
In its past.
Right. I was going to mention the Bishop of Washington, Marianne Edgar Budder, who did this amazing thing. Now, you won't, I don't think, like this, but there she is speaking. Trump was there with Vance, and she says, basically, please have mercy on people in America who you're scaring. And she said, immigrants, migrants, LGBT, trans, etc. Now, where are you on that, Pat? This is a tricky one, I know. Do you think that the church is the place to say that?
Well, look, I don't want to get too embroiled in American politics because that's not our context, but the church has always had a place of speaking truth to power and reminding those in power of the responsibilities that they have, particularly towards the weakest and most vulnerable in society. So I always believe, the prophets would speak about justice in the Old Testament. Jesus came for the marginalised, for the poor, for the broken. But fundamentally, I think the church's place and preacher's place is to preach the good news of the gospel and the hope we have in Jesus Christ, that he's alive today and can transform lives. So there's sort of like, we need to mainly stay in our lane, but there is always a place of speaking truth to power.
That's very, very political, diplomatic, I should say. Final episode of Britain's Great Cathedrals to the Glory of God airs tonight at 9 p.m. on Channel 5. Is Durham tonight then? No, Coventry's tonight. Durham's tonight!
Durham, Coventry and Lincoln.
Yes, Durham, number one, no question. Stay with us, Pat. We've got some more stories from the papers. Michael in the Times supermarket saying, look, this move against farmers on inheritance tax is wrong.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting the supermarkets are saying it because I suppose that's implying that they really believe that this could affect the supply of food in our country. Unless they're trying to suck up to some of their suppliers, I'm not sure. I think Labour are in a real problem here. And I think the mistake really was ruling out rising one of the bigger taxes before the election, because I think they decided the big controversial taxes are income tax, VAT and national insurance. So we're going to rule out raising any of them. We're going to go for these little ones that no one will notice. And it turns out that actually it really is those little ones that people do notice because then they feel personally attacked.
Such a lesson in politics, Anne, isn't it? This thing where the pensioners have gone completely ballistic.
I mean, you say a lesson in politics. I mean, I would say this government isn't doing politics. It doesn't understand politics, and it's the government.
Yeah, well, there we are. Stormy's talking about this, actually, on her show, straight after this one. Are supermarkets right to back farmers over inheritance tax? 0207 862 2222. Are you from a farming family, Pat? I'm just thinking. No?
Not entirely.
I know it was
No,
not a Christian family,
We've
was
always
it?
grown up in the countryside, around farms, and actually in a farm, rented a farmhouse or two in our time.
OK.
But no, don't put us.
Do you have a view on inheritance tax for farmers?
Say that again, Joe.
Do you have a view on whether an increase in inheritance tax for farmers is right or wrong?
I mean, I would listen to those on the ground, those who it actually affects. So I'm probably with the farmers on this one.
They've got, I mean, they really talk about a lobby. You don't want to... Never annoy a group of people with guns.
Or tractors.
And tractors. Brilliant. That's a good rule for politics. Look at this. There they are. I mean, and also, I was talking to a guy in Scotland. I was at dinner. I mentioned this the other day. He's got a farm in Scotland. I said, how much is your farm worth? He said, oh, OK, you're asking me to total it up, which they never do, really. But the land plus those tractors might cost 100 grand.
Yeah.
Plus the herds, etc. He said 8 million. I said, woof. I said, how much income do you make a year? Before tax, 48,000.
Yeah.
Wow.
And that's why they're so cross about having the 8 million taxed. So there we are. And in the Telegraph, the Prime Minister makes it harder to block wind farms. I can't work out whether they're still committed to net zero and everything.
It's not just wind farms. I think that's a slightly misleading headline.
Everything then.
Because it also applies to nuclear facilities, for example. So it's not just wind farms. I mean, I think, I would be more up in arms if it were. What they're actually talking about is making planning easier to get, not having things held up artificially. That's what they're trying to do.
It could even be cathedrals, couldn't it, if there were the demand? Might be
What, building a cathedral? Yeah, we haven't done that for a while, have we?
Stop the NIMBYs blocking places of worship.
Back in the day, I mean, 1,000 years ago, when someone said we're building a cathedral here, and there's some guy with a hut, does he get a say no, I'm not moving? You'd just clear the land, wouldn't you?
I imagine they didn't have much of a say back then, if I'm guessing.
But I never know whether we should be listening more to communities who say we don't want new homes here, or whether in the end the government is going to have to be a bit Chinese about it.
I think we're just so short of space in this nation. My wife's South African. We just came back from a holiday there in South Africa visiting family. And the vastness of that country, you just think, wow, But then you come back here and getting a train, I was in Coventry just now, and getting a train back, we're so squeezed. There's so little space. I think I'm with the government. You've got to do what you can to free up space and make it easier. It
should be better for churches to be in a really packed country, though. So because people, you can't avoid churches wherever you are, can you? That's what I don't understand. Japan is more crowded than us. They're more polite. How does that work out? People say we're all rude because our country's crowded. Well, look at the Japanese.
I don't think we're rude. I don't think we are very rued. But I suppose I haven't been to enough places.
Anne was just saying.
You haven't been to enough churches, Michael.
Yeah, we'll get you into Notting Hill.
I'm very much in favour of this build.
Are you?
Let's build HS2, HS3, Crossrail 2. I want it all.
Right. And where do you stand on the Chilterns?
The Chilterns?
Yeah. I mean, do you care about countryside or butterflies?
Well, I think there's a problem here. So HS2, I think the real tragedy is basically people who lived in the Cotswolds said this is too beautiful, we need to put the train underground. But for many people, the only time they'll see the Cotswold is out of the window on the train. So they're basically hiding it from everyone else because they don't want to see... I think those high-speed rail lines actually look quite attractive. I love sort of like the image of urbanity next to sort of natural wonder. I think it's a really sort of gorgeous...
When it's nicely done,
people need to relax a little bit.
But you would pave over the country just to get us moving again?
Well, I'd pave over 10% of it, yeah.
Yeah. Gosh.
Not all of it.
Don't hear that very often. Look at it. Can you imagine, Anne lives on Dartmoor. Imagine...
Yeah, I live on Dartmoor.
You can spare 10% of Dartmoor, surely.
I cannot spare you 10% of Dartmoor. I will not spare you 1% of Dartmoor if I have any say in the matter.
There we are. That's the firm word there. Pat in the Times, more parents lie to get children into top state schools after they've got bounced out of the private schools because of the VAT.
Yeah, this is a story just explaining that people are just bending the rules, should we say, to tell people where they live, tell the authorities, school authorities, where they live in order to be in the catchment area. Even they are misleading people about their religious observance or the level of their faith.
Yeah,
And
well,
this is something real for me, Jeremy. I mean, I'm constantly, not constantly, but occasionally having people ask me, will you fill out this form about our church attendance? And I'm always very clear to say to them, I will not exaggerate. I will only tick what is true. And if it says you attend church, you know, once a month or every other week, if you don't, I'm not going to be able to sign this form. So
good for you. That must be really
well.
hard.
It's just a tough place to be in otherwise, because
and you wouldn't say to them, look, if I put in you're here every week, morning and evening, will you give me a couple of grand for the roof? You wouldn't do that?
Well, I hope they read between the lines. They might do that, but they rarely do.
I don't know, that seems to have gone out of fashion a bit. People pretending to be Christians to get their kids into the local faith school was a story. There was a woman prosecuted for it a while back.
And there was a very famous film made about that as well.
Yeah.
Because I can't remember what it was called.
Oh, it was Rev, wasn't it? It was in an episode of Rev.
Oh, well, that may have been, but there was a film.
It was very amusing.
Well, that, but also people faking addresses. They go through. I mean, this is
but
amazing.
What's new? This is the point. What's new?
But also, why, if they are committed to finding a great school for their kids, that's impressive. I mean, there's been these fake separations. So people say, right, we're going to pretend to be divorcing. You take the kids and you move and you rent a house next to the school. And then you're in the catchment area, and we just need to have loads of public arguments for 2 years, and then we get back together.
I've never heard that.
I know, but of course
That's extraordinary.
It's worth so much money, a good school place.
Yeah.
Sky News says Eryri National Park insists the second homes policy is not discriminatory to English people. This is the new name, the old new name for Snowdonia, of course, and a number of places starting to say we cannot have and I'm not saying this in a loaded way because I don't know what I think about it, we can't have the richest people in our society picking off the 5% of best houses in all the best places, and they're not even bothering to go. I mean, they may not even Airbnb them. What do you think, Anne? Anti-market?
Anti-market, but also what I think is there are perfectly legitimate reasons for having a second home. For example, my nephew is a vicar and obviously doesn't own his vicarage, so he's got a home which he has bought, not in Wales, but in Cornwall. But it's the same principle. So, you know, there can be legitimate reasons.
This is where I think your two positions are in contradiction, though, Anne, because I think either you say we're going to have enough homes that people can have 1, 2 or 3 of them, and that means building on some of the countryside, or we say, OK, we won't have that many homes, but we'll distribute them very, very fairly. And for me, if what you want to do is protect the countryside, you've got to stop people having second homes.
No. I think that is a completely false argument. You don't stop people having second homes, particularly when, as I say, there can be very, very good reasons for doing that.
Well, I don't want to stop people having second homes, but I want to build loads more homes. What I'm saying is you can't have it both ways.
Have you thought of the amount of empty properties that there is in the country?
There aren't actually that many empty properties in this country compared to sort of Europe.
Plenty.
It's tricky, isn't it? We go on holiday to a particular place on the coast, southwest, and the house we rent came up for sale. And that's a big moment because it's got so many happy memories. And I had that thing of, we could scrape together enough and try and buy it or put a deposit in. And I was really torn because actually I do think it's wrong to, even if I rented it out to other people, I think in the end it needs a strong local community. I think it needs to go to a local...
I had a second home in a very small village all the time I was an MP.
Yeah. But
all the time. Now you say, but there are very good reasons sometimes for having a second home.
You have to live in your constituency, yeah. OK, massive thank you to Pat. Have we dealt with all the big issues?
I think so, Jeremy.
We talked about God,
Always
cathedrals. Final episode of Britain's Great Cathedrals to the Glory of God is tonight, 9 p.m, right here on Channel 5. We'll have more after the break when Storm joins us. Find out how the Hollywood actor Dick Van Dyke is still keeping fit at 99. And also, anything wrong with this birthday card? So some campaigners say, we have got a problem where all football-related cards only ever have men on them. More about this in a sec.